It's almost that time. Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons, Thursday Night Football here in Uptown Charlotte. Steve Wilks, PJ Walker, and the coordinators talk to the media on Tuesday. We'll break it all down, and I'll answer some of your mailbag questions here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure to watch the show and subscribe to our show over on our Locked On Panthers YouTube channel. We're following every Carolina Panthers game. I go live on that Locked On Panthers YouTube channel, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. If you do, that's okay. You can always check out every live show and every episode of the show over where you listen to your favorite podcast. Just be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode of Locked On Panthers. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where every single Friday, typically, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions. I'll answer a couple mailbag questions here on this Wednesday, but we'll be back at it next Friday on the 18th, answering weekly Friday mailbag questions. To participate, either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. Send those questions in to me at any time you have to go out there and do that over on Twitter. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And honestly, I'm kind of liking that this is a short turnaround. We don't have to sit here, beat around the bush for a couple days and wait until Sunday. We're getting right into it. We heard from Steve Wilks right on Monday morning following the Panthers' loss to Cincinnati, and he told us that PJ Walker would be the starter, gave us a little bit of an injury update. Then on Tuesday, we heard from Ben McAdoo, who had some encouragement about Baker Mayfield, saying that, hey, Baker, didn't fail in Carolina. Baker just got hurt. Okay, Ben, we watched the first 5 games of the season. He played terribly, and there's plenty of reasons why he didn't play well, and the fact that he came here late, the Panthers didn't do him any favors. The quarterback competition with Sam Darnold. Baker Mayfield was a disaster. Looked good in the second half last week, but still not enough for Steve Wilks, as PJ Walker once again be the starting quarterback on Thursday evening against the Atlanta Falcons. We'll see what the Panthers do from there. Will it be Sam Darnold? Will Baker Mayfield get another opportunity to be the starting quarterback? Or will they continue to roll with PJ Walker, who had a 0.0 passer rating on Sunday? The hope is PJ bounces back. But even if he does, I'll be curious to see if Sam Darnold gets another opportunity here as starting quarterback of the Carolina Panthers. Also heard from Al Holcomb, the new defensive coordinator here in Carolina, saying that it was unacceptable what the guys did on Sunday and that they did not execute, something that we've heard in our conversation earlier this season with Jonathan Stewart. We've heard from Matt Rule. We've heard from the players. Execution continues to be an issue here in Carolina as the Panthers sit at 2-7 heading into this Thursday night football game against the divisional rival Falcons, who they should have beaten about 13, 12 days ago. I guess probably a little bit longer than that, 10, 11 days ago, in that game in Atlanta where they lost in overtime thanks to a penalty that shouldn't have been a penalty on DJ Moore. Even if it was within the spirit of the rules, still shouldn't have been a penalty. And we've seen multiple occasions since then where players weren't flagged for removing their helmet in celebration. And, of course, Eddie Pinheiro missing an extra point from 48 yards and then a field goal from 33 yards and a pick six right before the half. Plenty of mistakes Panthers made that cost him that game on that Sunday afternoon in Atlanta. Going to have to clean that up if they want to win Thursday night here in Uptown, rocking those black helmets in the all-black uniforms. Going to look good. Hopefully they also play good. Steve Wilks, again, sat down with the media on Tuesday, gave more of an update on players like Jeremy Chinn, who has been designated to return from IR. He's been out with that hamstring injury, has not practiced in about 5-6 weeks, and he, being Steve Wilks, has asked multiple times, would Jeremy Chinn be available on Thursday night? And Steve Wilks said that he doubts very likely that he'll put Jeremy Chinn in that situation to play this week. When asked again, Steve Wilks let it known, I doubt very likely that it would put himself in that situation to play. And he also added that it would be asinine for him to play Jeremy Chinn, considering that Chinn would only get a day of walkthroughs and he hasn't played or practiced in 6 weeks. So anyone wondering, is Jeremy Chinn going to play? Steve Wilks won't say no. Not sure why he can't just go ahead and say, no, he's not going to play. But he said it'd be asinine for him to go out there and play Jeremy Chinn. So those are Steve Wilks' words. If Jeremy Chinn plays on Thursday night, then Steve Wilks is making an asinine decision by playing a player that he thinks could be an all-pro one day in the National Football League. So don't expect Jeremy Chinn to be out there. The hope is that Donte Jackson and Brian Burns will play. He said it's looking good for Donte. He seems to be fine. Brian Burns is still kind of a wait-and-see approach there with the shoulder injury that he suffered Sunday afternoon in Cincinnati, and that's part of the issue with a quick turnaround from Sunday to Thursday Night Football, where guys can sustain injuries like Brian Burns did on Sunday afternoon in Cincinnati, and then you're questioning whether they're even going to be available come Thursday evening. Donte Jackson, on the other hand, I think he was held out on Sunday while being active so that he could be prepared for this game, and then he could have 10 more days to rest and relax and rehab and be back and ready to go next time the Carolina Panthers come out next Sunday afternoon. So we'll see how that works out with Donte and Brian Burns. Of course, Jeremy Chinn, as I mentioned, not going to play. It would be asinine, according to Steve Wilks, if he does play him. And one of the keys of the game is going to be stopping the run. We've seen it in the past. Carolina Panthers have struggled against the run. They struggled week 1 against the Browns. They struggled oftentimes last year against the run. Some days they were great. Other days they were terrible. And when they're bad, they are bad. And we saw it Sunday afternoon when they were unable to fill those gaps and they were unable to execute. And Joe Mixon had a career day and set franchise records for the Cincinnati Bengals with his 4 first-half touchdowns and 5 touchdowns overall out of the running back position. Cincinnati had 36 yards rushing Monday Night Football. They turn around and have 241. They had their season high already in the first half. They were one of the bottom 3 rushing teams in the NFL entering Sunday afternoon's matchup there at Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati. The Panthers got to bounce back, got to be much better against the run, and that's the way the Falcons can beat them. And that's part of the reason why the Falcons were able to get a win last time out when they did play Carolina. They had 167 yards rushing. We saw on Sunday in the Falcons loss against the Chargers, a comical loss where the Chargers fumbled and the Falcons got it, and then the guy didn't even get touched and he fumbled the game away in San Diego, or I guess Los Angeles now, went down there and kicked the game-winning field goal. The Falcons rushed for 201 yards, and they have Cordero Patterson back and a guy like Tyler Algier who played really well against Carolina. He had 99 yards rushing. So Algier, along with Cordell Patterson and Marcus Mariota, all 3 guys Carolina Panthers are going to focus in on and be able to stop them, especially when you consider that the weather conditions might not be great. It's November. I thought we were out of hurricane season. I guess I need to Google when hurricane season ends. It's certainly over as far as the Miami Hurricanes because they stink, but as far as actual hurricane season, apparently still going on. There's a tropical storm rolling through here on Thursday night. Apparently, Tropical Storm Nicole should possibly roll in around 9 p.m. It was thought to be later after the game. Saw Brad Panovich, who is the weather extraordinaire for the local NBC station here in Charlotte, saying looks like around 9 o'clock. I think kickoff is about 8:15 on Thursday night. So looking at it, sometime in the second quarter, maybe later in the second half, the Carolina Panthers are going to be in a kind of a monsoon. They're going to have to try and run the football well. They ran it well last time against the Falcons. The Falcons also, that's their bread and butter. So the Carolina Panthers, certainly the key to victory on Thursday night is going to be stopping the run and also being able to take care of the football and run the ball well on their own if they're not able to put it through the air because of the elements, something that Steve Wilks and his coaching staff, of course, have been tracking, as it looks like Tropical Storm Nicole will play a factor in the game on Thursday night against Atlanta. And one other thing that stood out to me too was that Steve Wilks was asked by Joe Person from The Athletic whether he would be looking to fill any of the open vacancies he currently has on the defensive side of the ball after firing Evan Cooper and Paul Pasqualoni, the cornerbacks and the defensive line coach, respectively, on Monday. And of course, he let go of Phil Snow and Ed Foley. I think Foley's more of an offensive guy either way. And Wilks did not say that he wouldn't bring somebody in. He said he'll look at it. As he said, he's been evaluating everything. Possibly that's something that could happen following this short week against Atlanta tomorrow night. So we'll see how that all plays out. So Jeremy Chinn, not going to play. Brian Burns seems kind of iffy. Donte Jackson should be good to go. And the Panthers need to stop the run because it looks like a storm is coming. We'll see how that all plays out here on Thursday. But I told y'all I wanted to answer some mailbag questions. Got a couple of them, of course, short week. Only got a few of them. Okay, that's fine. Still want to get into it, give you all some of my thoughts and some of the questions that you have for me. So we'll do that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. If you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up right now. Right now, Locked On Panthers listeners can order the #1 rated Simply Safe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you don't want to miss it. Simply Safe was named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report, a third year in a row for them. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so you can quickly get a police response. Simply Safe is whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door, HD security cameras for inside and outside your home, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I, Julian Council, recommend. Get 50% off any new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL today. This is their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/LockedOnNFL. There's no safe like Simply Safe. One other quick note before we get into this quick mailbag here on a Wednesday. Baker Mayfield, who, again, Ben McAdoo kind of stood up for Baker, said that Baker didn't fail here. Baker got injured. I would disagree. Baker has failed here in Carolina. I don't see any reason for the Carolina Panthers to play him now that Sam Darnold is back and healthy and active on the roster. Of course, he'll be inactive on Thursday night as he hasn't practiced, in the same kind of token of Jeremy Chinn, who hasn't been able to practice and is only going to get a walkthrough. It would be asinine for Sam Darnold to play when he's not been out there in live action. So I guess he's been practicing, but still makes way more sense that you would either have PJ or Baker. But considering the implications of if you played Baker Mayfield and the percentage of snaps he might play this year, although I think it's going to get to the point where with 8 games remaining, I don't think he's going to play 70% of the snaps of PJ on the roster and Sam, and there's no plans to get rid of either one of those guys or even Baker Mayfield here in the final half of the season here in Carolina. I don't think that's going to happen. But for Baker Mayfield, he has not succeeded here. The hope, at least for me, was I was thinking this could be a 10-win team, that I felt like Baker Mayfield was a missing piece, and as we saw, that was not the case. And not getting the opportunity to go through OTAs and mandatory minicamp and to go through a full offseason program and go through all the reps during training camp in Spartanburg and be the #1 guy in the preseason, that hurt him, I think. But also, you get to a point in time where you just have to play better. He played a lot better when we saw him in the second half in a game that was already over against a Bengals team that apparently historically back in Cleveland, he always played good against or well against. It's hard to sit here and to say that he did not fail here in Carolina. Maybe there is a turnaround comeback story and he can lead this team to the playoffs. I highly doubt he'll get that opportunity at this point in time, but we'll see. Baker did not want to speak to the media on Tuesday. I don't really blame him. He's been a good teammate. He said all the right things, but I have to imagine that he's got to be pretty frustrated the way that he played on Sunday afternoon, that he's not getting an opportunity. Does he know that it's because of the draft pick? I don't know. But he's a competitor. He says he wants to win, but of course he's the guy who wants to be out there playing. So just something to monitor. Don't necessarily think it's like a controversy, but I did find that curious that Baker did not want to talk. And like Sam a couple of weeks ago, when like Baker had gone down, people tried to go talk to him in the locker room, the media that is, and Sam didn't want to talk about it because he clearly knew that it's like, hey, Sam, so Baker's injured. Do you think you might be able to save the season, buddy? Yeah, he didn't want anything to do with that. So that's where we're at. Okay. Only a couple mailbag questions. Again, at me at Julian Council, or DM me as well. Follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, as long as Twitter exists. Apparently, Elon Musk might want to put a paywall of $8 per person. I don't know about y'all, but I'm not necessarily trying to do that. But if I have to, I guess I will. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Okay, let's get into it with Kevin. And we've been talking about this, and I got another person who asked me about this as well. Apparently, what is it? The Roar, there's another Panthers podcast. They were talking about this as well. And apparently they must have mentioned my name, give me a shout out. I don't know, but we've talked about the Panthers trade deadline. We're past that, and there will be a fire sale. As we know, there hasn't been. Robbie Anderson, and we'll talk about him momentarily. He's no longer here. in Carolina, Christian McCaffrey. He's now in San Francisco. And whenever you see any sort of promotion of a game, I think it's Sunday Night Football. I think that's what San Francisco is playing in this weekend. It's Christian McCaffrey. It's like, wow, Christian is already the face of the 49ers. That was quick. He's a great player. Happy for him. Hopefully he gets to actually play playoff football, have success. One day goes to Canton and maybe comes back and retires as a Panther. I have no idea how it's going to play out, but it was the right move, I think, for the Carolina Panthers to send both Robbie Anderson and both Christian McCaffrey away. Now, there's still a question after Sunday, and I briefly hit on it as I believe it was Jake Glazer that reported that the Packers had offered a first-round pick for DJ Moore as the Packers are trying to find receivers so that Aaron Rodgers can stop looking as bad as he's looked, and his receivers are no good, and they just seem like they're just cooked. Like they're 3-6. They're only a game better than Carolina. So had DJ Moore gone there, he would still be losing football games, I think. So I don't know if that would have been the best situation for DJ. It is the Packers, though, and a better run organization. Have no idea. But we got Kevin asking me with the report out that the offer for Burns was 2 future first and a second this year. We start to approach franchise quarterback levels of compensation. Did we make a mistake passing on that trade? I feel like I made this relatively clear. My stance, and of course, it's going to be case by case. I don't know necessarily if this is a blanket statement, and the way it is, but I'm certainly willing to look at the player and look at the compensation and then decide, okay, for this player, would I take that? The other player, would I not? For me, when it comes to proven players like Brian Burns, who's coming off a Pro Bowl season, who just had his fifth-year option exercise back in the spring, that's a player that I want on my roster. That's a player who has almost half of your sacks when you have one of the worst pass rushes in the league in terms of sacks so far this season. I don't want to give that player up. He also plays a premium position. It's not like this is a linebacker we're talking about. And I'm not saying like an outside linebacker, which is like his position, that or defensive end. Like I'm not talking about like just a middle linebacker. I'm talking like this is an edge rusher, one of the premium positions in the NFL. When you look at it, if you want to just kind of like rank what you would want to pay, you want to pay your quarterback. You probably right after that want to pay your edge rusher because you want to have a quarterback. You also need a guy to get after the quarterback, to take the other guy off the platform and to put him on the ground. And that's what Brian Burns does here in Carolina. He's on pace, as long as he stays healthy. I know he's got the shoulder. He's on pace to have over 10 sacks the first time in his career here in Carolina. He's a young player who I think the Carolina Panthers will be investing in after this season and absolutely should be investing in. They have decided that Jeremy Chinn, J.C. Horn, Derek Brown, Brian Burns, DJ Moore, those 5 players, those are the guys they want to build their team around. Of course, there's other players like Ike Ekwonu, who just got here, who's been excellent. There's other players they also want to build around, but those are the kind of the names that we were hearing, mainly Derek Brown, mainly Brian Burns, mainly DJ Moore, that they always said like, hey, they're off limits. And you can offer whatever, a king's ransom, we want Brian Burns. Because what they're betting is Brian Burns, and I'm going to bet the same thing, Brian Burns is going to end up being a better player than any of the 2 guys they would have used potentially with those first-round picks and those second-round picks. And when you talk about franchise quarterback levels of compensation, like Deshaun Watson got traded for, 3 first-round picks? So we're not quite there just yet. But also, like, you're already going to be in position to draft a franchise quarterback. So if that's going to be the case, now you're going to have to wait, because look at the class 2021, which I've talked about a couple times. Like Justin Fields, looking like he's the best one of them. Trevor Lawrence, up and down. The Jags got to win on Sunday against the Raiders. Zach Wilson, I mean, the Jets are winning in spite of him. I watched a lot of that Buffalo Bills game on Sunday, and that run game, that defense, like that's what won them the game. He's just not it at this point in time. Mac Jones, is Bailey Zappi better than him? It takes some time to figure out whether you have the right guy or not. And it feels like maybe one, who knows? I still believe in Trevor, but maybe one so far, if we can even say one, of those 2021 quarterback class, when we thought that was a deep class, has turned out to be any good, or might be the answer. So you're already in position to go get that guy. I feel like if you get him, you get a rookie, you want to have things around him. You don't want to just do a complete all-out rebuild. I don't think that's what the Carolina Panthers are trying to do, and I think they've made that message very clear when they decided, hey, LA, we get it, but no, we're good. And here's the thing, too. It's not just like I'm proving players over picks. It's also like the picks, they don't really help you now. Sure, the second-round pick would help, but the first-rounders aren't until 2024 and 25. Those are really the picks that you're thinking about. And who's to say that the Panthers get into the free offseason this year and they're trying to, trade and maneuver, that team's gonna be like, yeah, we're good with taking your first round pick next year. No, this is a year-to-year kind of basis, man. Like when you have your window to win, you're trying to win right now. So I don't think the Panthers or any team is going to be like, yeah, we'll take your pick in 2024 and 25. Like, no, we want to win next season. Trading away Brian Burns for those picks does not help us win next season. So no, I don't think they made a mistake. We'll see. Only time will tell. But for me, I don't think they made a mistake. All right, now over to Jake. Big news out of Indianapolis on Monday afternoon. Frank Reich, former Carolina Panthers quarterback, was fired, which is wild to me considering like Chris Ballard, who's the GM, would be the guy I would have thought would have been fired in that situation. But apparently Jim Irsay, the owner up in Indianapolis, has just taken over control of that team. He decided on the tarmac last year after they got embarrassed by the Jags in week 17 or 18, I guess it was now, when they were wearing clown costumes because they were talking about Urban Meyer and Trent Baalke. Urban Meyer was already gone. They're talking about Trent Baalke, the GM down there. They got clowned by the clown fan base in Jacksonville. And he said on the tarmac, get Carson Wentz out of here. We're done. So he forced a trade of Carson Wentz to Washington, the guy who Frank Reich had worked with back in Philadelphia. And Frank Reich, I'm sure, was a big part of bringing Carson Wentz over to Indianapolis. That didn't work out as they fell apart in the final 2 weeks of the season last year when it looked like they were going to be a playoff team after I think they won a Thursday night or a Saturday night game, whatever it was, against the not Indianapolis, but against the New England Patriots. You also have now seen that he forced the benching of Matt Ryan in favor of Sam Ehlinger, which, again, what? And now Frank Reich's been fired. And Jeff Saturday is the head coach up there, the interim head coach. And Jeff Saturday has no NFL experience as a coach, no college experience as a coach, and has worked, I think, 3 years as a head coach at a high school in Georgia. I was at a UNC football game not that long ago, and Jeff Saturday was out there on the sideline, or not on the sideline, but before the game, as the hype man before the team came out of the tunnel. So the guy who was a hype man for the North Carolina Tar Heels football team like 4 weeks ago and is also doing radio for the Tar Heel Sport Network is now the interim head coach up there in Indianapolis. That all to say, Jake is asking, could Frank Reich be the answer as the next head coach? If you don't believe so, why not? Yeah, sure. He fits what I think David Tepper is looking for. He's an experienced coach. He's been in the playoffs, but he's also had the same exact problem in Indy that we have here in Carolina, playing the whole quarterback musical chairs. Now, when Frank Reich got there, and let's also recognize and remember this, and Peter King from Football Morning America brought this up on Monday morning before Reich was even fired, because he was talking about Mike Vrabel and the job Mike Vrabel's done down in Tennessee. And I was there in Tennessee covering the Titans back when Vrabel first got the job with John Robinson, the general manager there, after they fired Mike Mularkey when they went to the divisional round of the playoffs. He was not the first choice necessarily, I think, in Tennessee. It was very close to him being the Colts coach, but like Josh McDaniels. So actually, hold on. Let's backtrack. With the Colts, Irsay was looking at Josh McDaniels. He had hired Josh McDaniels, but then Josh McDaniels said, actually, I'm good. I don't want the job. The other guy that he wanted to hire was Mike Vrabel, but then Vrabel took the job down in Tennessee, having a relationship with John Robinson that dates back to their time spent in New England with Bill Belichick and that organization. Also with that, it led to Frank Reich being the head coach because, hey, he was available. He had been on a good team with the Philadelphia Eagles, had won a Super Bowl. It made a lot of sense. Come on down, Frank Reich. Frank Reich, with Andrew Luck that first year, goes to the playoffs. We all understand that in August of 2019, that franchise got flipped upside down when Luck decided to retire. And since then, they've gone with Jacoby Brissett. That didn't work out. They've gone with Phillip Rivers. That did work out, but he only played a season. And then they tried Carson Wentz, now Matt Ryan, now Sam Ehlinger. And when you play the quarterback musical chairs, this is what happens to you. And the axe fell on Frank Reich's head on Monday afternoon in Indianapolis. So that's the only thing I'll say. How much of that was Frank Reich, but also they were put in a bad situation when he took the job. He had a quarterback, and all of a sudden the quarterback decides, hey, I'm good. I don't want to do this anymore. So that's the only thing I'll say about it. There's also been some talk about Nick Sirianni, who's now the Eagles head coach, how big of a role he played on that offense there in Indianapolis, and maybe that's part of their downfall. I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs there with the Colts, but that's just been some of the scuttlebutt there as Jim Irsay has just he's shaking everything up there. So yeah, Frank Reich, I'm sure he could be a candidate. I don't know if he's the answer though. Okay. Let's take another quick pause here. I'll come back and answer the rest of these questions you guys got for me here on this Wednesday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers. Whether you're looking to pop the question, have a milestone to celebrate, or just want to let your love sparkle, Blue Nile can help you make your celebrations even more memorable. As the original online jeweler, Blue Nile offers the largest selection of independently graded diamonds and pieces priced significantly below traditional retailers. Blue Nile has helped millions of couples create their perfect engagement ring. Their easy online tools let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then help you handcraft her perfect one-of-a-kind engagement ring. Looking for a piece of fine jewelry to commemorate a special milestone but still having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Shop stress-free with Blue Nile's 100% satisfaction guarantee. All Blue Nile orders are insured and shipped for free in discreet packaging. They also offer overnight shipping if you're in a rush. Make your moment sparkle with Blue Nile. Go to BlueNile.com and use code LOCKEDON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. That's BLUENILE.com. Code LOCKED ON to save $50 on your purchase of $500 or more. BlueNile.com. Code LOCKED ON. Okay, a couple more questions here, then I'll get out of here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Panthers. I got Will and David basically asking the same question. Will asking, what's the current state of the Carolina Panthers? What would you like to see the Panthers do? Tank and target a certain player in the draft or keep pounding the rest of the season? David also asking, with Carolina having the weakest remaining SOS, meaning strength of schedule of any division team, is there any chance we still hold on to hope of the playoffs? Well, it's one of those things where, like, ask me this question on Friday if this would have been the Friday mailbag here on Locked On Panthers, because then I would know what the result of Thursday night's game against Atlanta is. If they beat Atlanta, they would then be back within like a game and a half. Because, okay, so Carolina's 2-7. Atlanta is, 4-5 now after their loss? Yeah, they're 4-5. Tampa Bay's 4-5. So they'd be back within the game of Atlanta. And in New Orleans, we'll see what happens with them. Tampa Bay, they're not great. Like, yeah, they would be right back within probably a game of first place in the NFC South if they win that game on Thursday evening. So with that being the case, in 7 games remaining, then yeah, I guess you could still kind of talk about the Panthers having a hope to go to the playoffs. Is that the best thing for the organization long term? I don't know. If they actually get to the position where they're really there in December and early January with a chance to go to the playoffs, we can probably have more of a spirited discussion. I've already said that, like, I think it's better to actually, win games. That's the whole point of this, and to establish a winning culture. And then when it's time to get a quarterback, you can do that. You can always trade up, but then you can also ask me, hey, Julian, why didn't you just trade away those picks? Because then you could have used it. Well, can't use the picks for this year anyway, so I don't know how much it would have helped you actually. But either way, the Panthers are very likely to be at the top of the draft, more so than they are to win a division here in the NFC South this year in 2022. So yeah, I would, of course, rather than win games and keep pounding and go to the playoffs, because it's more entertaining for me. I would hope it'd be more entertaining for y'all as well, because that's the whole thing. We only get 17 games a year. People sit around all offseason long, craving for football, saying how much they miss football. And then as soon as the team starts off bad, they're like, nope, tank, screw it. It's like, why do we do that? I will never understand the mentality of like, hey, let's just tank. Because again, as I've been over multiple times, I continue, I'm sure will do with the 2021 draft class of quarterbacks. We thought those guys would be great. We go back to 2018 as well. Darnold and Baker's class. Look how that panned out. It's not a guarantee. None of it's a guarantee, but yes, they do need to draft a quarterback at the top of the draft. That is the best path forward for the Carolina Panthers. No more reclamation products. No more trying to just hope that this random guy off the street can help them out. They need to go out there, restart their clock, get a rookie contract, and hope that's the right guy. Now, it has to be the guy they really believe in. Don't just draft one to draft one like we did with Matt Corral. Draft the guy who actually you think can be the franchise, not to just appease people, but because you actually believe this is the dude that can turn it around and can horse a Lombardi trophy. And that's kind of the question with any quarterback available. Do you think that can be a guy who can win it for you? Now, it's really hard to say in the draft because, it's really a projection and you have to see what they look like in the NFL. But we know on the roster right now, the 3 quarterbacks are not going to hoist a Lombardi trophy here in Carolina or probably anywhere, just based off what they did so far. So, yeah, I would rather them win because I have to sit here and talk about this team 5 days a week and watch the game every Sunday, whether I want to or not, because I have to break it down for you. So, yes, as someone who hosts a Panthers podcast, I would rather talk about a winning football team. So that's what I would hope. And I don't love the draft. So no, I'm not looking forward to that. At least the draft will have way more intrigue this year because we'll be talking about a head coaching search as well. And then talking about, where they're in the draft and evaluating quarterbacks. Like that will be way more intrigue this upcoming year than it was in, I think, the last couple of seasons. Okay, Steven, last one here on the show today. Julian, I'm not sure if you have mentioned it or not, but I figured I would ask, what are your thoughts on Terrace since the Robbie trade? Also, your thoughts on Robbie having a not so good start in Arizona. Well, y'all know how I feel about Robbie Anderson. I looked this up the other day. Apparently, Robbie Anderson has like one reception, like 3 targets for like -4 yards. So it's not going great. And Alex Clancy, who's the host of Locked On Cardinals, is calling for Cliff Kingsbury's job, although Cliff Kingsbury just took him to the playoffs last year and signed an extension this offseason. So I don't know if he's going to get his wish there. But yeah, the Cardinals, not great. 3-6. Robbie's still on a losing football team, and he's not making any plays. I don't want to say that 2020 was a statistical anomaly because really the last 2 years have been for Robbie because he was solid in New York. And he had a couple 900-yard receiving season, a couple of 700-yard receiving seasons, and was pretty good. But now I don't know. It's not working out for him. The guy, I haven't watched the Cardinals at all. All I know is like the dude just got there, and they expect that he's going to be a major part of the offense right away. I think is a little ridiculous and naive. So we'll see. I won't be watching. I don't necessarily care. I'm excited that Terrace Marshall has played well, got his first career NFL touchdown on Sunday in the game against the Bengals, and really, he's been that number 2 wide receiver, which I hoped would be the case entering the season, and he's made some plays. And my hope is he continues to make plays and continues to grow, and that he can be that guy opposite of DJ. So when that rookie quarterback comes in next year, he can rely on that guy. And I think Terrace, hopefully through the next 8 weeks of the season, that he can continue to grow and get to the point where it's like, all right, we feel confident in Terrace Marshall here in Carolina. So that's my hope. We'll see. Robbie Anderson, best of luck. Honestly, don't care. And that is all from me. So that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On podcast here on Locked On Panthers, which I already said. Either way, make sure to watch the show, subscribe to the show over on YouTube. Also check us out wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, rate, review, and subscribe there. And follow me on Twitter at Julian Council, where typically on Fridays I answer weekly Friday mailbag questions. Either at me or DM me on Twitter to participate in the weekly Friday mailbag next week on the 18th. Tomorrow, going to have our Locked On NFL crossover episode. Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. We talked to him 2 weeks ago. Going to talk to him again as we break down the Thursday night matchup between the Panthers and the Falcons. All that coming up tomorrow on the show. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Thursday.